emergency march in Knoxville City Council building and trainings with local activists. Finally, we have Brandon Rothrock, who is a second-year geography master's student at West Virginia University, where he works on a project assessing student perceptions and beliefs of climate change. He is also a Southeast Regional Fellow for Citizens Climate Lobby for 2020. Prior to WVU, Brandon attended Penn State University, where he was both the student programming coordinator of EcoReps and a recycling and composting education intern at the Sustainability Institute. He has helped organize various sustainability outreach and education events. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have you all here today. So I want to kick off this panel with our first question to each of you, which is, how have you had success in the political process and success with mobilizing others? And we'll start off with Paige first.
Thank you, Destiny. I think those questions kind of go together. We mostly have had success in the political process when we had success with mobilizing others, because it's really hard to have success as a youth-led movement if you don't have the people power to get stuff done. So when we mobilize people, we get more stuff done. And then when we get something done, like a big action or a strike, then we get more people. So I think it's kind of like this little wheel that spins, and that's kind of how I think we've had the most success.
Yeah, thank you. Shae, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so for me personally, I don't know if I would say I've necessarily had success in the political process, but I do have experience. I've had lobby meetings with my representatives and voiced myself there. And I've also called and emailed my representatives, but I've not seen tangible accomplishments in the political process. For success within mobilizing others, though, I've been a leader for the North Carolina Triangle Youth Team within CCL. And we have initiated several projects like outreach and lobbying together. So we've been able to achieve an increase in membership and participation within the climate movement, and also informing others about these issues.
Great, I love it. Thank you, Shae. All right, we'll go over to Isabella.
Yeah, thanks, Destiny. So kind of like Paige said, kind of the core mission of Sunrise Knoxville is to absorb people into the movement, and Sunrise at Large is a national movement, so we can build that people power to mobilize the public around policies and political strategy. But as far as like some of the ways that we've really engaged in the political process beyond direct actions are things like endorsing candidates that we believe will fight for a Green New Deal on local, state, and federal levels. So we've endorsed Matthew Park, who ran for House District 15 here in Knoxville and came very close to winning. And we actually just endorsed Marquita Bradshaw, who is the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate seat here in Tennessee. So really targeting those candidates who we believe will represent the Green New Deal is critical to the mission of Sunrise. And other things we've done as far as like political processes are phone banking for candidates, canvassing, and having like statewide phone banks for candidates that we seriously believe will represent the values of climate justice on various scales. So, but yeah, I really want to reinforce what Paige said. It's all about using action and using mobilization as a way to really push people forward with that political agenda. So, yeah.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Isabella. Brandon?
Thanks, Destiny. I haven't really had that much experience on the political side, so I'll talk mostly about the mobilization side. But for me, I would have to say, talking about your personal experience and your quote unquote why it matters is super important in mobilizing people. I found that bridging personal connections as to why we care about climate change is super important in mobilizing individuals.
Yeah, I think storytelling is very key to get people engaged and active in this movement. Thank you all. So my next question may not be applicable to each of you, but I do want to go ahead for any of our younger audience members out there. Would you please share your experiences and insight into how to get high school age students or younger involved in climate action? What ways can they get involved in the work that you do? So either Paige or Isabella, would you like to start us off there?
Yeah, sure. I personally don't have a lot of experience with getting high schoolers involved in our movement, but just as a youth-led movement in general, like a high schooler can do anything that a college kid or any other community member can do. So, I mean, they can get involved with anything that we're doing, whether that be leading an entire team of people or just helping out in an art action. I mean, we welcome any person from anywhere, so whatever they can do. But Isabella can probably talk a little bit more about them getting involved.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, thanks, Paige. I really want to reinforce what Paige said. High schoolers actually are a huge part of Sunrise's leadership. They bring like this intense passion and energy to the movement because they know that they have to fight really hard to secure their future and to secure a Green New Deal, which is their future, right? So high schoolers have this like passion and energy that they really bring to Sunrise. And something I really want to like kind of emphasize is that you know, high schoolers are already on the front lines doing political work. They're already phone banking for candidates and canvassing and planning action. So a lot of high schoolers, and we have just had a few get involved with our hub even recently, a lot of these high schoolers we met while we were doing a lot of the similar sort of political and social ways of engaging the public, like phone banking. So high schoolers are on the front line. I think obviously, you know, they're in a different environment as far as sometimes age barriers and school barriers, but at the same time, like they're already out on the streets fighting. So we've encountered high schoolers in some amazing contexts, like with campaigns, with actions. So they're out there, they're doing amazing things. And I think, like Paige said, they have the capacity and the energy to really continue to fight. And they really bring that, that energy to the movement that's needed. So yeah, I'll just end with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Isabella. There's just a lot of passion and energy there from younger people. And we'll actually hear from one. Shae, would you like to talk to your experiences as a high school student and ways that you can encourage other high schoolers or younger individuals to get involved in the climate movement?
Yeah, thanks, Destiny. So from my own experience and perspective, there are a lot of youth who are concerned about climate change, and many of them want to do something about it. To a certain extent, you need youth who are willing to take that extra step themselves to get involved. But for those who are, and again, from my own experience and my perspective on what appealed to me about Citizens Climate Lobby and the climate movement, it is all about opportunity and belonging. Offering opportunities and belonging to a young person is what I think is most attractive to them. If you can give them empowering opportunities to get involved and take action, then those who want those opportunities will take it. If you can also give them a team, especially a youth team, to be a part of and have a role in, then that is also very appealing. For instance, at Citizens Climate Lobby, when I joined, I was looking to get involved immediately and start taking action and be a part of an organization. And CCL offered so many opportunities and just as many actions that I could take as the adults could. And also starting the local North Carolina Triangle U team at the time was very exciting as well. So I think offering a team, especially a youth-oriented team, and what tangible opportunities is the best way to get high school age students involved in climate action. And some ways that youth can get involved in the work that I do is to join Citizens Climate Lobby, join our National Youth Action Team, and join your local chapter. If your local chapter does not already have a youth team, the National Youth Team has lots of resources on how to become a youth team leader and start a local one of your own, or you can just be a member of your local chapter. And within CCL, you'll also get a lot of access to networking the entire climate community because many volunteers are part of multiple organizations, and you'll be able to find out more about those from them. And CCL also often partners with other organizations and features them. So not only will you be able to join the welcoming and empowering opportunity that Citizens Climate Lobby has, but you'll also be able to join the whole climate community and learn about all the organizations that are a part of this movement so you can better find your own niche within it or how you think you can make the most impact.
Thank you, Shae. I would have been remiss not to mention the Youth Action Team or the National Youth Action Team as one of its co-leaders alongside Sharon Bagatelle and Franklin Wu. But CCL, I think, is just getting started with having many more opportunities for youth to get involved and find their voice. So my next question is really taking a look at where we are currently in our world. It looks quite different from 5 to 6 months ago. But this question for all of our panelists is about this pandemic. How has your activism or advocacy changed since the pandemic? And how have you pivoted your tactics? So we'll start with you, Paige.
Yeah, we've definitely had to get a lot more creative with the way we've done actions. So while we used to do like a climate strike in downtown Knoxville, we had to do like an art action online and do some like social media like stuff like, I can't think of the word, but like bombarding politicians and stuff like that. And we've also like, instead of just focusing on environmental justice and like climate change and specifically that, we've also like changed our focus onto healthcare and Medicare for all and that aspect of the Green New Deal, because that's really important right now with the coronavirus and all that stuff that's going on. So it's really changed our perspective, I think, as a movement and just young people in general. So I think ultimately it's been a little bit of a good thing, just because now we're all looking at everyone and how they're being affected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Shae?
Yeah, the pandemic has definitely had a major impact on my activism as well. But with everything being virtual, it has also opened up a lot of new opportunities for me. Before the pandemic, our Triangle U team had originally planned on reaching out to schools and teachers and doing in-person presentations, especially during the month of April during Earth Day week. But because of the pandemic, in-person presentations were no longer a possibility. Earth Day went live and turned into a virtual session, so we were no longer able to reach out to schools. However, Earth Day Live opened up the possibility for us to host a local live stream, which is what we did. We did outreach, we marketed our presentation to individuals and organizations, and we hosted a live stream about political engagement through Citizens Climate Lobby. It was rather successful, although I can't remember the exact number of people who attended. But after this, we decided to do a series of online presentations like it, which we called the Climate Live series, which was a series of online presentations. And we did 3 in total, one on political engagement, again, another on COVID-19 and climate, and a third on the economics of climate policies. And over these 3 presentations, we had over 100 people attend. And we were also featured on a panel to talk about this form of outreach that we did during CCL's national conference last June. And the recording of our panel is available on CCL's YouTube channel. So our tactics definitely changed from reaching out to teachers and environmental clubs to a much broader audience, target audience of youth in North Carolina. And nevertheless, even though we targeted only North Carolina, we actually gained national attention, and our audience ended up reaching as far as Hawaii and California. So this would not have been possible, of course, if our presentations were in person. And some other opportunities that opened up for me were that I was able to join the Alliance for Climate Education Fellowship in Eastern North Carolina this semester, because it's online. Before, I hadn't been able to make the transportation commitment, but now I am able to. And if you don't know what Alliance for Climate Education is, their mission is to educate young people about climate change and its issues and empower them to take action. And in addition, this summer I completed a climate activism summer series that was also online with MC Warren, which is a climate and energy justice organization based here in North Carolina. So these were opportunities that otherwise would not have been accessible for me. And so I definitely recommend for other youth to also look for opportunities like these during this time.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you've been able to take advantage of so many of these other opportunities that wouldn't have been available to you otherwise. Sounds great. Isabella?
Yeah, thanks, Shae. So I do sort of want to emphasize also what Paige said. This period of COVID-19, I should say this era of COVID-19 has really sort of forced us to think more innovatively and creatively about how we can still mobilize people, because there is that sort of perceived barrier of, right, having to stay online, having to social distance, and sort of a sense of isolation and lack of connectivity. But I think with Sunrise on a national scale and within our own hub, we've seen this amazing wave of trainings happen where we're just still continuing to absorb people into the movement particularly folks who have no background with climate justice organizing, or just young people who really feel that need to start fighting and to really start getting engaged in the movement. So on a national scale, Sunrise School was unveiled by the movement, which was this amazing series of different trainings, art trainings, technology trainings, direct action trainings. So now a lot, like literally thousands of young people have like the mental skill sets and tools and understand how direct action and mass movements work and how they can work in the future. So I think even if it's frustrating that we can't take to the streets without a certain level of risk as far as COVID, we have seen the pandemic sort of like push us to train people and to mobilize in a way that mass movements necessitate. So it's been an amazing period of learning and growth on behalf of our movement. And I think it's also, on a more personal note for me, been a great way to connect with Sunrisers that I generally wouldn't talk to normally. You know, when we're organizing in person, a lot of times we'll stay within our hubs, so Sunrise Knoxville, but this past summer we've had a statewide training. So now we have a Sunrise Tennessee coalition where hubs across the state are sort of joining forces together and talking about how we can really organize around a Green New Deal. And also talking to other organizers in the Southeast at large, because as we know in the South, especially with issues like climate, it's really important to unify and to join forces. So yeah, we've also kind of bringing back that political strategy we talked about earlier with Sunrise. And we took this opportunity to phone bank and really organize virtually around candidates like Charles Booker, Matthew Park, all of these really strong progressive voices who not only represent the Green New Deal, but represent Medicare for all, universal basic income, affordable housing, which we see are all very relevant and very needed during the pandemic, especially. So I think sometimes when we do things virtually, it seems to take away the value of what we're doing. But I think with Sunrise, we've seen like we're pouring a lot of this energy into socially distanced things. So hopefully we can start to take actions very gradually and start to work our way back into the streets, sort of with that knowledge of how movements work and how we can continue to organize as young people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point to make, that this has given a lot of people the opportunity who wouldn't have otherwise had the time to gain some knowledge and learn how to be better advocates or activists. Brandon?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot with the pandemic about like my own work capacity. And then not only that, but then thinking about the work capacity of my campus leaders specifically. So I always have been, I guess I've been upping my contact with my campus leaders recently and just asking how they're doing, if they need any help, and just like reiterating like why it matters for them to be a part of this movement and why they agree to work with Citizens Climate Lobby as a campus leader, but also to reinforce the fact that they should be doing what they feel most comfortable and safe for them to do during this time. In terms of tactics, I would agree with Isabella that this is a great time for a lot of students to be involved in a lot of different trainings online. So I've noticed that a lot of people have been joining the climate advocacy training through CCL, but a lot of people have also been doing training through the Climate Reality Project. And I feel like a lot of people are more receptive to doing things online in different and exciting ways, like everyone else has said. I know some of my campus leaders have kind of shifted their attention to working online in different platforms such as Discord, GroupMe, or Slack as a way to work with different students on campus. So that way they don't have to be necessarily on Zoom all the time, because I know Zoom fatigue is definitely a real thing after working full-time for the summer through a fellowship. So definitely just like trying to figure out new ways to work with people has definitely been a challenge, but is always a dynamic and shifting process.
Yeah, certainly. And Brandon, could you tell us a little bit, just briefly, what a Southeast Regional Fellow does and who campus partners are or campus leaders are, just for those listeners who aren't aware?
For sure. Yeah. So for Citizens Climate Lobby, I'm a regional fellow for the higher ed sector. So we have the campus leaders program. So there are campus leaders that are spread out across different colleges and universities in the Southeast. So for example, I have campus leaders who have their own CCL chapters at like UNC Chapel Hill, the University of Georgia, Vanderbilt University, things like that. And so basically they are trying to stir political action on campus through their chapters. So it kind of like works hand in hand with the local chapters of CCL as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon.
Yep.
All right. So again, we're going to reflect back on our current climate and state of our nation. So in light of the recent magnification of racial injustices within this country, how have you found ways to address racial inequalities through your climate work? And Paige, we'll start back with you again.
Thank you, Destiny. I guess for Sunrise in general, our main goal is to just get the Green New Deal, raise the attention of the Green New Deal and eventually get it passed. So the Green New Deal really really addresses climate injustice and racial injustice and environmental racism. So I think that it's really important that when we think about climate change and the climate crisis, that we're not just thinking about recycling and reduce, reuse, recycle, all that stuff, and picking up trash and all that kind of stuff. We need to think about how people of color are disproportionately affected by climate change. And I guess this kind of brought the racial injustices going on right now kind of really reinforced that there are racial inequalities going on right now. And so we do need to make sure that we're not fighting just for the upper class, just for the white people. We're fighting for everyone in the country when we are fighting for the Green New Deal. So I guess, yeah, we just think about who we're fighting for, and that's everyone.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point of it is definitely a point in time of self introspection and thinking about how the work we do as climate advocates and activists, how does that really impact all communities and not just the ones we represent, right? Shae?
Yeah, thanks, Paige. I would definitely agree with that. Through CCL, the summer series I did with NC Warren and research I've just done on my own, I have recently learned a great deal about the connection between climate change and racism, and how racism is a root cause of climate change, and how, like Paige said, that Black, Indigenous, and people of color are being disproportionately affected by climate change. And so that has now become one of my biggest reasons for advocating for climate justice in the first place. And with this information, I have talked to my family about it, and I have informed my representatives about my concern. And within CCL, my local chapter has formed an anti-racism working group I'm a part of, and we're working on identifying how we ourselves can be anti-racist and how we as an environmental organization can bridge and form relationships with racial and social justice organizations, and also increase diversity within our membership. And I think it's very important that we make these efforts to address racial inequalities because they're worsened by climate change. Throughout my senior year, I'll also be writing a thesis on the topic of climate justice and particularly environmental racism. So I'll be doing a lot more research about it as well.
Awesome. I'm sure we'll all be very eager to find out how that goes and possibly be able to read it too. Isabella?
So yeah, the mission of Sunrise is to pass a Green New Deal as soon as possible, because we know we don't have a lot of time left, and to create millions of good paying jobs in the process. But we know that in order to do that, every person in this nation has to have the same level of basic rights, right? We need equity in this nation. So the movement for Black Lives and the uprisings that have been happening and have been spearheaded by activists and community members are critical to the fight for any sort of piece of legislation or set of legislation aimed at targeting injustice. So you can't move forward with the Green New Deal until Black Americans, Indigenous folks, and people of color have the same rights as white Americans. And that's an extremely important message that I think still needs to be emphasized, especially when talking about climate justice, because discourse around climate change historically hasn't really been centered around race, right? It's been centered around like technological solutions and scientific solutions, when in reality, the conversation around race is like so central to the entire movement around climate justice. So as a hub, like obviously we're a very small hub, but we still have the capacity to stand in solidarity with other groups, movements, and organizations in Knoxville that are led by community members and activists kind of spearheading this work, whether it's protests, art actions, events. And then we also do have anti-racist meetings within our hub, right? Like how can we identify sources of inequities within our own hub and make sure that people who have voices in our hub are being heard in the sense that they can lead our hub towards justice? Do BIPOC folks have a voice in our hub? Do working class folks have a voice in our hub? Those are really important questions that any organization, every group should be asking themselves. On a national scale, Sunrise Movement has stood with the movement for Black Lives. Obviously, I think we need to recognize the fight for climate is just so interrelated with the fight for Black lives and the fight for any marginalized life. And it's not the time to stop fighting for climate justice now, because climate change, as Paige said, as Shae said, is disproportionately affecting minorities, working class people, immigrants, the list goes on, various marginalized groups. So now more than ever, we need to fight hard for climate justice, and not just climate solutions, but things like reparations, healthcare, affordable housing that's safe and green and renewably energized. Like how can we really mobilize in a way that not only recognizes green solutions, but that places people's lives and humanity sort of at its core, at the core of the fight. So yeah, I think it's going to be a long journey, especially as a hub, figuring out how we can continue to uplift this message, because it's not going to be ending anytime soon. It can't end anytime soon. But that really does mean standing in solidarity and making sure that our actions and our events and our hub is as equitable and intersectional as possible. So we're recognizing various issues at once, not just, like, how do we transition away from the fossil fuel economy? It's more, how do we do that in a way that's equitable and justice oriented? So yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. That was great. Brandon?
Yeah, I'd say I definitely echo all the different thoughts that the other panelists have had. Definitely racial justice is climate and environmental justice. That definitely has to be at the forefront. I would say that one of the main things we need to do is be learning about these injustices and then incorporating them into not only our communication, but also our policies. So speaking about my own academic work, learning about the perceptions and beliefs of climate change, you have to really be thinking about just breaking down the barriers in our climate communication in this country. Just thinking a lot about different surveys that I looked at, national surveys like through the Yale program on climate change communication, are very silent on the identities that people have in this country. So in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, things like that are usually missing from a lot of their communication. And I feel like we need to be amplifying these voices to make sure that our movement is clearly equitable across everyone. And then going off of that, not only incorporating into our communication, but incorporating into our policies. So for example, with Citizens Climate Lobby, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, like obviously champions this equality that we should be striving towards. And we should definitely be trying to implement those things as quickly as possible.
Yeah, certainly. So for my final question for the panel, and I love ending on this one before we open it up to questions, but for each of you, how do you stay motivated? How do you not get discouraged, and what keeps you hopeful? So Paige, we'll start back with you again.
Yeah, I guess just in general, in our Sunrise Knoxville hub, there are some really great people that I'm surrounded by, and seeing them work hard for what they believe in really motivates me, because that's just a really great thing to see. But in the pandemic, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard because you're at home by yourself. So I've been just celebrating little victories because they're small, but it feels a lot better than looking for that big one and never getting to it. So celebrating those, and then just having this this vision of who you're fighting for and what you're fighting for, and then remembering that definitely keeps me going.
Yeah, I agree. Having that mission or vision at the forefront is important, and being able to feel energy from other people, even if it's virtual, is also a really great way to stay motivated. Shae?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also I have a lot of motivations and moral reasons for being an activist, and but I'll admit that there are times when climate change is so scary and overwhelming that it seems like there's nothing we can do about it, especially since it literally involves and impacts almost every other problem that our world is facing. So it's a lot, but just being an activist helps me to not get discouraged. Doing something and having a goal of making an impact helps a lot, because after all you can do about anything is your best and to try and make an effort. So how I stay hopeful is just to try and adopt a mindset and philosophy that hope is all I can have. Hope is long term, and it helps me face the things that scare me. Staying positive and believing that things will get better is not only good for my mental health, but it also helps me to keep doing what I'm doing, because it gives my climate work purpose. Without hope, what I'm doing is worthless. If I did not believe that that things would get better, that we can do anything to change our fate, then my climate work wouldn't matter. It wouldn't help anything. It wouldn't change anything. But my impact, no matter how small, is important and necessary for our world to see change. And I just remind myself of that to keep that attitude and work.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great reminder. Isabella?
Yeah, I really resonate with a lot of what you said, Shae. I think that climate anxiety and climate grief are very real. I think every single person on this call has felt some sort of sense of urgency and really intense grief and almost like mourning for our planet and for the people on our planet, because things are getting lost very quickly and they seem to be getting worse every day. And when, especially in the context of climate change, you're thinking about this very systematic, very just unimaginably large, gigantic issue that seems impossible to tackle. It's very easy to just like want to almost kind of step away and just detach. But like Paige said, like even within our hub, we have the most amazing, passionate, like tenacious people I've ever met in a lot of contexts, and pretty much every day. People just work so hard. And I think in Sunrise at large, there's just this amazing network and web of young people who are consistently told, you can't fight for this. The Green New Deal is not realistic. You're never going to get this passed. When in reality, like, this is the fight for our lives. This is a matter of survival to our generation and to other generations before and after us. So there's just this beautiful drive that we sort of feed off of each other and progress into the future. And I could go on for hours about how inspiring it is, but I think finding that sense of like community is really important in Sunrise. Something I also want to emphasize is Sunrise like sort of always like places taking care of yourself at the central of this fight, because at the core of this fight, because it's so easy to get exhausted and feel burned out and hopeless in the midst of fighting against the climate crisis. But having that community and that support system is way more than just, an organization or a hub. It's a movement. It's a sort of community. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. So finding the humanity in the climate crisis is really important, and sort of finding each other, finding other people who might not come from the same place, but have the same sort of belief that we can move forward with this is really inspiring. I definitely get discouraged all the time. I feel, especially during COVID, I feel very discouraged sometimes, but at its root, I think Sunrise and seeing the work of young people in general just like remind me of the power that we have and that we will have. So yeah.
Thank you. I love that. Brandon?
Yeah, I would say I definitely agree with what all of the other panelists said. Definitely from what Isabella just said, where we're all coming from different places, but we all have the same goal. I definitely feel that we need to be celebrating the small victories. That's what I do to not stay discouraged. I also like to think about a lot about keeping myself organized and on task, and just, again, celebrating just being able to do things during this time is definitely super important. Another thing that I really like to do, especially in graduate school, but on my own time, is writing about these issues. I feel that just having a journal and being able to collect my thoughts about the climate crisis and all the other different injustices that are going on in this country, it's super important to not only be speaking with everyone in group settings like this, but also having your own personal reflection. And I definitely feel like keeping a journal of some sort is super helpful to me.
I love that tidbit there. I think from what you've all said, just to be able to continue this really important, significant fight, you need to find your community, and hopefully the people in this call have found it either through some other environmental climate organization, through CCL, through Sunrise, whatever it may be. And then also just really remember to take some time for yourself, to take care of yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. We only have a few more minutes left on this panel. I do want to leave some time for questions for all of you. But I just want to say thank you all so much for being here today. It's so wonderful to hear from each of you. This is something that helps to energize me and keep me motivated in this fight. And so I do appreciate you all sharing your wisdom with us today. So Eric, would you like to share with us any questions from our audience?
Well, until a moment ago, I'd only received one question, and you asked it verbatim in your last question, Destiny. But I did just get another one here. It looks like it's for Brandon in particular, but I think it could be open for everyone. Have you used your interest in writing about these issues to publish letters to the editor or op-eds in your local paper?
Yeah, so that's interesting that that was just mentioned. But so I'm actually working as a Rachel Carson Council Fellow this year. And within that role, I'll be working on a lot of different media pieces for them, which will namely be letters to the editor, and also some other publications through some Appalachia focus groups, particularly like, I can't think of them off the top of my head, but like mostly just writing about those issues through this other fellowship that I have.
Any of the others? Have you guys been writing?
When I first joined Citizens Climate Lobby, I did write some letters to the editors. They never got published, but I am looking to continue to write those and just haven't had time.
Yeah,
I have not written anything, but we do have a podcast called Rocky Top Sunrise, which I'm going to go ahead and plug, which is a statewide Sunrise, Tennessee podcast, which is not writing, but it is communication and climate communication. So podcasting is awesome. I really enjoy it. And that's kind of a way we've been unpacking climate justice as a statewide organization.
I love it. That sounds amazing. Have to go check that out. I do have a question quickly for Paige. I know you mentioned the Climate Art Action. I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about that, especially in a virtual setting, how that was done.
Yeah, well, what we did was we had like a stencil that we had designed, and then we posted it on Instagram, and we asked everybody to make it, and then we sent out a Zoom link to everybody on our email list, and then they joined the Zoom, and then we made it together on it, so like you could put it on cardboard or on a poster or something. And then for the next few days, we asked people to post it on Instagram, and I might have mine, I don't know where it is, but it said Green New Deal for blank, and so you could fill it in with whatever you wanted. So mine said Green New Deal for hope, and then you posted it on Instagram, and your caption would be like a little bit of an explanation. And then we ended up making a collage of everybody that had posted theirs, and we posted that on our Instagram. But it was kind of cool, and everybody used our hashtag, and yeah, it was kind of cool.
That's really neat. I think that's a super innovative idea. I love it. Well, I think that's our time. So thank you all for joining us today. And thank you to all of our panelists again. This has been a phenomenal opportunity and a great discussion. So I hope you all have a good rest of your day. And let me know if you have any questions by emailing us, or you can even email youth@citizensclimate.org if you have any questions specific to youth engagement within CCL. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Destiny.
Thanks,
Bye.
Destiny.
Thanks, Shae. Thanks, Paige. Thanks,
Destiny.
Isabella. Thank you, Brandon.
Bye.
Thank you very much.